Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm here today with a release of the AutoFPS program for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. And trust me when I tell you this is a program you're going to want to get. This is a program we used a lot in 2020. Fantastic program. What it does is dynamically changes your settings to maintain a target FPS that you have set. It's a program that had so much success in 2020 that Microsoft and Asobo said they were going to implement their own version of it in 2024. Well, as I kind of expected, their implementation of it was kind of substandard or subpar compared to this version that we have from Reset Transponder. I just tried it for the first time. I'm absolutely blown away. So let's take a quick look initially at what it does. So this new version adds Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 compatibility. It automatically detects and displays the MSFS version that you're using, so you can keep separate settings for each version, 2020 and 24. The installer is super easy. It migrates your settings for 2020 over to this new version, so you don't have to reset your 2020 settings if you've already set it up and you're already using this program for Flight Sim 2020. You can change the settings for either 2020 or 2024 without either version of the simulator working. And Asobo's version of this program that they have in the sim will automatically be disabled when you're using AutoFPS. In other words, you're not going to have a situation where you have the Asobo version of this running in the sim and the AutoFPS version of this running with the program. Now, looking into the settings, there are a lot of settings in this program, which is wonderful because you can fine-tune what you want it to do. However, I found that just using the automatic setting where the program determines its own target FPS and then adjusts everything for your flight is absolutely perfect. I see no reason personally to go in and do all these changes or to change all these different settings, but they are available. So let's go through real quick what this does. So there's an automatic adjustment to your TLOD, your terrain level of detail, which is the setting in the sim that has the biggest impact on FPS performance when you're either on the ground or in the air to maintain a target FPS or to an altitude schedule. That's another option that you have. You can set altitude bands where the program will change your TLOD to a certain level depending on what your altitude is above the ground. You can choose between VFR and IFR flight types, and the settings, the automatic settings, are slightly different for the two. And this is the one setting that you can set outside of the expert settings, the advanced settings. And I would recommend just, again, using the automated setup and selecting if you're going to be VFR or IFR, which basically means GA flying or airliner flying. It also has a night option, so if you're flying at night, obviously you're going to want different settings so there's not as much to see. So it's going to reduce your system workload by not having to draw distant scenery that can't be seen if you're flying at night, which is fantastic. Now you can set your own FPS target, or you can have the program determine the optimal FPS target for you. And what it does is it runs for 20 seconds and it sees what your FPS is over that 20 seconds and what your settings are. And then it's going to give you a target FPS, and then it will adjust your system to get that target FPS that the program itself has determined. There is a cloud quality decrease option. So if cloud quality is impacting your sim performance, it can reduce your cloud quality temporarily. Automatically adjusts the object level of detail. There are 3 modes: PC, FrameGen, and VR, and you can have different settings for each mode. The great thing about the FrameGen mode is it will use this FrameGen mode whether you're using native NVIDIA FrameGen, the FrameGen mod, or lossless scaling. So any of those 3 options you can use, and use the FrameGen mode for AutoFPS. The program can be started at any time, but preferably before you start Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'll talk about that in a second when we talk about the install. You can also start the program in the main menu when you're in the main menu in the sim before you have started a flight. The app will exit itself when Microsoft Flight Simulator closes. When you close the window, it does not close the app. It will simply move the app down into the system tray. You can click on that icon in the system tray to open the window again to make any changes you want to the program. And I'll bring up the app here real quick just to show you a few things. You've got the connection status right here, and you've got the simulator, sim connect, and session. And session means you're in a flight. You've got right now Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is displayed. I apologize for the size of the window. I know it's going to be difficult for some people to see, but if you want to switch between your settings for Microsoft 2020 and 2024, you just click here on this button. It'll switch back and forth between the two. And you can see for 2020, I have the expert options enabled, which are these options down here. And for 2024, I don't. So when I select 2024, it goes back to what I had set. It will tell you right here that you have the latest version of the app installed. And these connection status indicators will turn green as you connect to the sim, as Sim Connect connects to the simulator, and when you get into a flight. Your sim values here are your FPS, your TLOD, your OLOD, your height above ground level, foot per minute climb or descent rate, and your cloud settings. And the way I have it set up here for 2024 is the way that I use it. I do not have on top selected normally. I just have it selected now because I want to be able to show you guys what the on top checkbox does. It keeps the AutoFPS window on top no matter what you're viewing. And this is helpful if you're changing settings. You can see what effect those changes have on your sim values, your sim performance. But what I basically do, I have the auto target FPS box here checked, and I'll either select VFR or IFR. So if I'm flying GA airplanes, I'll select VFR, or if I'm flying airliners, I'll select IFR. This message here will change. It'll tell you what mode it's using. It'll tell you when it is in the process of gathering the information it needs to check what settings are appropriate for you. That's called FPS settle. So anytime you see FPS settle down here, what that means is the program is recalculating. It's running that 20-second timer again to check and see what your target FPS should be and what your optimum values are for the TLOD and OLOD. And once it's determined that, then it will activate. And you will see your automatic target FPS setting right in here. So in a flight I do here shortly, you're going to see the automatic value it came up with for my sim was 53 frames per second. And that's including frame gen, which is fantastic. Now we come down here into the expert options. If I click the expert options button here, there's different ways of controlling your FPS. There's FPS sensitivity, FPS tolerance, and auto TLOD. FPS sensitivity makes more changes, but they are smaller changes. FPS tolerance will give you larger changes, but fewer of them. And auto TLOD uses the altitude schedule that I talked about earlier. You can set altitude bands for changing your TLOD. And there's this other setting here that's TLOD min and TLOD max plus. And what this is, if you're flying in mountainous terrain, it will adjust the TLOD based on your height above the terrain. If the level of the terrain, the altitude of the terrain below you is changing, it will react to those changes and adjust your TLOD accordingly. This is great for mountain flying. But as I said, for my particular use, I turn the expert options off. I simply select auto target FPS and I let the program do its thing. So let's talk first about how to install the program. To install AutoFPS, you just come here to the GitHub page, click here on version 0.440. It's going to ask you where you want to save the program. And what I do is just create a folder here, save the executable, open where you have the executable installed and double click. Do not run this as administrator, simply double click on the exe file. And it is going to ask you if you want to create a link on the desktop. The answer to that question is yes. The first option is remove auto start. You do not want to do that. The second option is what you want. Do not configure auto start because I want to be able to decide myself whether I'm going to run AutoFPS or not. There are options for auto start with FSU IPC if you so choose, or auto start with the sim. If you're only going to use AutoFPS and you're always going to use AutoFPS, there's no reason not to auto start it with the sim. But I personally like to not configure the auto start so that I can choose when I'm going to run the program. Since I already have AutoFPS installed for Flight Sim 2020, it gives me the option to upgrade, and you just click on upgrade. And then it gives you the notification that this will now uninstall the 2020 program, which is fine because this program works for both 2020 and 2024. So we click OK. And it runs through the install process. It's going to check out whether you have a certain file or not. If you do not have it, it will download and install the file, and then we're done. All right, so here we are on the ground in Anguilla, and you can see FPS settle, and you can see the 20-second countdown. Now I have auto target FPS selected and VFR mode, and so what it's going to do is find out what the appropriate target FPS for my setup is. And you can see it's decided 53 is the appropriate target for my particular setup. TLOD is the priority, frame gen is active, and it is a daytime flight, so the nighttime setting is not enabled. And so now what I can do is just go on a flight. I'm going to leave this on top here, and we'll see what happens as we take off. You can see right now my TLOD is 200, my OLOD is 300, which is actually higher than what I normally set them at. So in this particular case, using AutoFPS is actually giving me better visuals than I'm used to, better visuals than I actually use on a regular basis. So let's get going here with the flight. Let's make sure we got all our lights on here. Approach flaps are set. We'll turn our fuel pump on. Toes on the brakes, release the parking brake, and let's get matriculating here. I do have live traffic enabled. This is the Bonanza G36 mod from Flight Sim 2020, which works in 2024 and works brilliantly, I might add. Unlike my rudder control. And there's about 80 knots, and let's go flying. And so you're going to see as we climb here, we got positive rate of climb, gear coming up, that TLOD is changing, and that is why it is now orange. I understand it's difficult to see for some of you in particular. The issue is I have a 2K monitor, so I really can't do anything to make this a little better. We'll go 25-25. We'll bring up the flaps, and now you can see my TLOD is up to over 300. My TLOD is up to over 300 here. Clouds are on ultra, getting 60 frames per second with frame gen. So I mean, my settings are just amazing. And all I've done is just let it do the auto setting. That's all I've done. And now my TLOD is up over 400 into the 450s. We'll go outside and take a look here. TLOD is coming up on 500 now. It's absolutely amazing. I'm getting just super smooth performance. Continue our climb up into the clouds here. TLOD is now up in the 550 range. OLOD is still up near 300. TLOD now maxed out at 600. Climbing through 3,500 feet. And you can see here my TLOD is 600. So, I mean, my TLOD is crazy high. And just absolutely flawless as we fly here over St. Martin. Princess Juliana Airport beneath us here. And this is just absolutely stunning, maxed out visuals. Absolutely amazing. All right, here we are on the descent into St. Kitts, and we're going to see how this performs as we make the descent. I'm going to leave the window on top, obviously, so you can see it. And let me just move it right up over here. Again, apologies for the size of the window. It's just the fact of the matter is that I can't increase the size of it just because I am on a 2K monitor and there's not really much I can do about it. Right now, it's in the FPS settle mode because I just reset myself back into the sim here. So shortly it's going to tell us what our target is, and again we've got 47 here for the target, and still with a TLOD of 600. Now it's starting to come down as we get closer here to some terrain. And I flew this airplane into this airport yesterday, and you can see the stream on my channel if you want to. And I definitely got some stutters coming in on final here. So let's see what we get in. See what we get here with AutoFPS enabled. I want to see now as we get closer to this scenery here, you can see the TLOD is dropping. And that's because we've got less performance headroom. But it still goes to show what you can get just with a, I mean, I have a 3080 Ti with the frame gen mod. I mean, pretty remarkable if you ask me. My dislike of the G1000 is starting to change here a little bit. Alright, now this should set us up on a really nice left base for runway 7 here at Bradshaw. And again, look at these absolutely amazing visuals that we're getting. TLOD is now down into the 400s, which is to be expected. And settling here at 1,500 feet. OLOD, you can see they're maxed out at 300. TLOD just coming down nicely. The max TLOD it has available for me right now is about 410, which is right where I am. And I'm going to start bringing the power back here just a little bit. And we'll go first notch of flaps here. The autopilot off. We'll go gear down. Second notch of flaps. And let's just keep an eye on what we get here coming in. Start to see the airport come into sight here in a little bit. Got a bit of a wind down here today. But again, the LOD, TLOD is still in the upper 300s, which is really nice. You have live traffic enabled as well. So we'll take a look out there down final. Alright, we're going mixture and prop full forward, fuel pump. I'm gonna leave the fuel pump off just because the fuel pump is really loud and it's annoying. Alright, and you can see the TLOD starting to come down here as we turn final here in St. Kitts. Alright, let's see. Flaps are down, gear down 3 green. Keep an eye on that airspeed here. Alright. One white, 3 red, so we'll just hold off here a little bit on the descent. A little bit of power coming out. Slight crosswind out of the right, and now we are perfectly on glide slopes. Let the nose drop. TLOD coming down. Get ourselves over on center line here. Alright, 90 knots, 450 feet per minute descent. You can see the TLOD is now down to about 300. Gonna get a little rough and tumble here in. It always does when we get in close here in St. Kitts. This is a payware scenery from SLH Sim Designs. TLOD now down in the 260s. Let the nose drop just a little bit until we get a red light here on the Pappies. TLOD coming down, airplane coming down, stutter free. Stutter free. There's one red on the Pappies, that makes me a happy guy. I don't mind being just slightly high. I should start to settle here now that we're out of the over the airport environment. And look at this, just absolutely butter smooth performance in every respect but the flying. Power coming out. Power is out. And we'll hold that nose off here. Little bit of left rudder, a little bit of right aileron. Not too bad. And as we touch down, the TLOD hits 200. Butter smooth performance on the way in there. I mean, I tell you, I just flew this approach yesterday, and the difference with AutoFPS is absolutely astounding. And I touched nothing. I did not change a single setting. Nothing. Just open the program, let it do its thing, and that's good. And if you need to reset things, if you want to get it to have it recalculate as you're doing your flight, just hit the reset button. It's going to do its thing. Guys, this app is an absolute game changer for Flight Sim 2024. So go out there and get it. Appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please let me know your experiences with it in the comment section below. And I look forward to talking to everybody soon. Take care.